Hey everyone, Mr. DVB here. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing WandaVision, which is the first live-action MCU series to exist. WandaVision takes place after the events of Avengers Endgame and follows Wanda Maximoff and Vision as they live together in a sitcom reality in the strange town of Westview. So this show has absolutely blown up over the course of the last 2 months. It has become probably the biggest show in existence right now. Not of all time, but just, currently. And it makes sense. It's a part of the MCU. It's kind of setting up for future films and stuff, and the MCU is massive, so it makes sense that this show would be as big as it is. Going into it, I wasn't really excited or anything. I'm not honestly excited for any of the MCU TV shows that are coming out right now, but I am going to watch them since they do, like I say, connect to the movies and whatnot. But this show, I enjoyed it. There's going to be spoilers in this video, so if you guys have not watched this series, my quick thoughts: I like it. I don't think it quite sticks a landing. I have some issues throughout, but overall, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was pretty unique for the most part. So those are my very quick, brief thoughts. Now I'm going to dive into spoilers. So the first few episodes of the show, and one of the aspects of it that I really liked was that it's kind of designed to be a sitcom. So it's referencing a bunch of these sitcoms that existed in real life over the past few decades. So, for example, the show starts off in the 50s, and it's kind of referencing, like, the Dick Van Dyke Show. Then it kind of moves into shows like Bewitched and whatnot, and it just kind of goes over the decades with each episode, kind of referencing different, sitcoms. And I thought that was really unique and kind of cool. Some MCU fans called the first few episodes boring, and the laugh tracks were annoying and whatnot, and it's just, that's how TV shows were back then. And I liked those first few episodes. Yes, they didn't have a whole bunch of story to them, but they were so unique for the MCU, and that's why I liked them so much. And there were still hints of some mysterious things going on, and I really liked that. That's what I liked with the show so much, was the mystery, right? Kind of trying to figure out what's going on, and I really like that about this show. Eventually, Wanda ends up having kids, and they grow up really fast, and you're kind of starting to realize, yeah, there's something off here. This is like a completely fictional area or whatnot, and then we find out that this town of Westview is kind of surrounded by an invisible force field, and everybody within it is, being turned into a character in this sitcom. And there's people outside of the force field, more importantly, part of a group called SWORD, which is sort of like the new version of S.H.I.E.L.D., who are trying to figure out what's going on here, since there's all these missing people and whatnot. And it was an interesting storyline, and I thought it was pretty cool. Eventually, the show kind of transitions more so to focusing on some of the characters outside of the area, so we are reintroduced, I should say, to some characters like Jimmy Woo, who was in Ant-Man and the Wasp previously, Monica Rambeau, who was the little girl in Captain Marvel. Now she's grown up, and she's working for SWORD. And then, there's Darcy from the Thor films, and this new character, Hayward, who's kind of like the leader of SWORD, I guess you could say. And yeah, the show focuses on them sometimes, kind of cutting back to them, as they try to figure out what's going on with Westview, and they try to get in there and whatnot. And that was kind of a cool aspect, but there was definitely some writing that was pretty weak in those episodes. I think it was mostly just because the show had to sort of reference things that have happened in the MCU for people who might not remember them or haven't watched some of the movies. So there was just some dialogue that was really cheesy, where they're referencing things, and I understand that they kind of had to do it, but it just came across as really bad at times. So that was my biggest issue I got from those parts with those characters. But overall, I still like the mystery there. I really like the way that they kind of show what happened to Monica, the fact that she was snapped, and we get to see her kind of come back from that in the hospital, and her mom's been dead for like a couple of years. So there was just some sequences like that I really enjoyed with these characters. And then, at one point, a really big twist that kind of blew up fan-wise was when Evan Peters showed up. So Evan Peters played Quicksilver in the X-Men films. The X-Men films have absolutely nothing to do with the MCU. There's no connections whatsoever. In the MCU, there was also Aaron Taylor Johnson, who played the MCU's version of Quicksilver. He was killed off, and so whenever Evan Peters showed up saying, "Oh, hey, how you doing, sister?" it was this huge thing, because it's like, oh my god, are they going to bring in the X-Men now? And it was a really awesome moment. And obviously it goes in a direction that a lot of fans do not like right now, and I'll sort of discuss that later on in this video. But that was a cool moment. I really didn't like the Halloween episode, and it's funny because a lot of people really love this episode, but for me personally, it was the worst episode in the show. I just didn't like the humor in it. There was some things that happened story-wise that I liked, but I just wasn't a fan of the episode whatsoever besides that. But it does end, with a pretty interesting moment where Vision tries leaving the Hexagon area, and he starts to get ripped apart. Like, he can't leave this area, he's confined to it. And then Wanda ends up exiting the area for a second, and sort of the military faces off against her, or whatever, and she ends up expanding the borders of the area. So Westview is growing, and now more and more people, like all these military people trying to stop her or whatnot, they're becoming characters in this sitcom, and it's kind of interesting. And so it's basically like Wanda is, she's kind of imprisoning all these people, right? They are stuck in these fake character sets or whatever, these fake mindsets where they're pretending they're part of this sitcom, and so it kind of makes her almost somewhat of a villain in some ways. And I don't love the way this show kind of ends her character arc off, and I'll get into that when I talk about the last episode. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. Again, at this point, most of the mystery stuff is sort of wrapped up, and that's the thing with the show for me was, I get it's a mini-series, but I do think some of these things are resolved too quickly, and I'll definitely talk about things being resolved too quickly once I get into the last episode. But Episode 8, I want to talk about this one really quick. I guess, okay, Episode 7, we find out that Agnes, who is her neighbor, has been the villain this entire time, and she's been kind of pulling some of the strings and whatnot. But anyways, Episode 8, this is the best episode in the show, by far, in my opinion. It doesn't have any of the sitcom element, but I really, really liked it. We kind of get a little bit of backstory for Agatha. We find out that she is a witch from Salem back in the 1600s, and she's trying to, like, absorb Wanda's powers, I guess you could say. She's sort of confused on how Wanda's able to, conjure up this entire fake place without any studying of witchcraft or anything like that, right? It's like she's just so powerful without even really knowing what she's doing. So there's this great episode where we basically get to see a bunch of Wanda's backstory. Now, these are all things that we've heard about in the MCU before, like how her parents were killed by a Stark missile, or how she got her powers from the Mind Stone, but we've never seen those events. So this episode shows us events, and it does it in a way that definitely has a lot of emotion at the core of it. There's this one scene where Vision talks to her after her brother died in Age of Ultron, and they're sort of talking to each other, and he talks about how grief or whatever is love persevering, which has become a huge quotable line already. But yeah, I just really liked that episode. I liked the emotional core in it. I liked the music in it because it stood out from that standpoint. And just all around, I thought it was great. And then we head into Episode 9, the final episode of the series, which for me just kind of didn't work very well. I think it was way too rushed, because the last episode ended off with Agatha kind of having, like, magical ropes, or whatever you want to say, around her kids' necks. And then there's this fake Vision, which is, like, white and more cybernetic, which has been created by Hayward. And they're going to use him to kind of get in there and eliminate Wanda. And that episode, or that story arc, I should say, as far as the fake Vision goes, was wrapped up like that. It happened so quickly. He basically shows up and fights Real Vision for, like, well, not even Real Vision, because we find out that he's completely fake and he's just created by Wanda, but they fight for, like, a few minutes, and then they have, like, this, this dialogue where they're sort of discussing, okay, wait, so I'm not the Real Vision, neither you are, or we're both the Real Vision, or whatever. And then I kind of assumed this would happen. Vision touches the fake Vision, gives him all of his memory, and so now this white Vision flies off, and it's like, okay, Vision's not dead because he's going to be reintroduced into the MCU through that character. And I was just like, I don't know, I don't like that. I don't like when they bring back characters from the dead and whatnot and resurrect them and whatnot. And when you look at it now, you look back to Infinity War, all the characters that got snapped, they lived. Right? They came back from the dead. Gamora's back. Now Vision's back. Loki's kind of back. The only real character that died in that movie and is staying dead is, like, Heimdall, right? Like, it removes consequences from those movies, and I hate when shows and franchises do that. Star Wars is so bad for that with villains, and now the MCU is kind of doing that with a lot of their heroes, where, oh, they died, but they're not actually dead because we're bringing them back somehow. It's a little bit annoying, so Vision, he's basically died 3 times now, because he dies at the end of this series in a way where, Wanda has to kind of let go of everything and let this area disappear and whatnot, so everybody can be freed, and so that Vision can disappear, and so can the kids and whatnot. And, that part of it, like that emotional ending or whatever, I thought worked well. I think they handled it quite well. But, yeah, I don't know. The episode as a whole was just way too rushed, in my opinion. The Agatha part of it, their fight, I did not like whatsoever, especially the ending of it with, like, the ruins. It felt super cheesy and rushed, and I just didn't like that ending. The CGI in the episode, and I know it's a TV show, but the CGI in this episode was just the worst. There were some really bad-looking moments. There'd be scenes where characters outside of the area would be looking at the big force field around it, and the green screen was just so bad. It looked terrible. and when Vision's fighting fake Vision, they're flopping around in the air. It looks stupid. So I don't know. I just didn't really like the last episode. And then there's the whole Quicksilver thing. So we find out that Quicksilver, he's not the MCU Quicksilver, or the X-Men Quicksilver. He's actually this guy named Ralph Boner, who Agatha just gave powers to. And I was like, okay, really? That's stupid. But I wasn't, like, extremely pissed or anything. I was just like, okay, whatever. But fans online, there's been some fans who haven't reacted to it well. The director kind of said before the episode came out, there's going to be fans who will be disappointed by the finale due to unrealistic expectations or due to, fan theories and whatnot. And some fans of the show and fans of the MCU backed him up by saying, yeah, people shouldn't have all these wild theories. Just let the creators, have their vision and whatnot. And I agree with that statement, but at the same time, they intentionally cast the guy who played Quicksilver in the X-Men films as a fake version of Quicksilver in MCU. They intentionally cast him, and then they just did it all and ended it with a boner joke, right? It's like they knew what they were doing. They intentionally cast that actor. They could have gotten some random person, but they intentionally got the guy who played Quicksilver in the X-Men movies, and I was just... It's kind of annoying on Marvel's part. Now, I suppose, technically speaking, I've heard some theories from people, like my friend Jack thinks that this still could be the Quicksilver from the X-Men movies, because he kind of laughs at the boner joke, like he doesn't really act like it's his actual name or whatever. And I suppose that could be true, and I hope so, because it's just such a stupid fake-out, in my opinion, right? Like, it's just such a lame joke to just have all that build up and then, oh yeah, it's a boner joke. It's like the Mandarin situation all over again. Except, honestly, a little bit more annoying in my opinion. So, yeah, I know this review has also just been me kind of recapping the series. Overall, I liked it. There was episodes I loved, there was episodes I didn't really care for too much. I loved episode 8, and I loved the backstory for Wanda there and stuff. But the last episode for me, just way too rushed, and I kind of found it just wrapped up everything too quickly, right? Darcy shows up for like 5 seconds, and she basically just crashes her truck into Hayward's and says, have fun in prison. And I don't really like the way they handled Hayward anyways, because, his whole goal this entire time was to basically just free these people who are being enslaved by Wanda, right? Like, yeah, he wanted to make this fake Vision, which could possibly be a weapon, so you don't necessarily agree with his methods, but at the end of the day, he was trying to save these people, and they just turned him into, like, some douchey, I don't know, like, director of sort. And I don't really think the way they handled this character was the best. It was kind of dumb, and we're treating Wanda like this great character when she's enslaving these people, and she doesn't even really want to let them go, and then she's just, fine, leave. It's like, she's been holding these people hostage. Like, I don't really think it was a great way of wrapping it up and a great way to kind of showcase this hero. They could have had some interesting consequences for that, but she doesn't even apologize to the people, right? Like, they just leave, and then the episode literally just ends with her leaving Westview. After she's closed the force field, and then she just flies away and it just ends. And I was like, what? Like, that's the ending? It just, I don't know, it wasn't conclusive enough in my opinion. And now I know that her story is going to be continued in the MCU and the movies and whatnot, but just as far as the show goes, I thought the ending was just kind of rushed. It just ended out of nowhere, and I didn't really care for it that much. So, there you go, guys. I didn't like the ending, and I really think that kind of lowered the show for me a decent amount, because there was barely anything I liked about that ending, honestly, besides the Vision part of it, with how they handled her saying goodbye to him and whatnot again. I thought that stuff was well done emotionally and stuff, but everything else in the episode kind of sucked, in my opinion. So overall, the show, I think it was pretty good. I had issues, but I liked it, and yeah, there you go. Those are my thoughts on WandaVision. I know this review has been kind of jumpy. It's been a while since I've done a review, so give me some slack, will ya? But yeah, no. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.